when you look at the motion, do you see it as a turning point the industry has been waiting for, or are we still scratching the surface? Let me start with you, Madam Kavikairiua.
Thank you. Now, we welcome the motion. The motion to prioritize local content is definitely welcomed and encouraged. We believe it's a very important motion because it's going to assist in showcasing the Namibian culture, providing showcasing local talent. So and it's something that we prioritize as well. That's why it's part of our broadcasting code, in that there are some requirements for the percentage of local content the broadcasters need to broadcast.
And Mr. Nicanor, what are your thoughts on the motion?
Well, NASCAM supports the motion, obviously, because it empowers the members, the content creators. And I think it's very important that broadcasters in the country, I consider them to be, they are the wind that blows, the creators' content across the globe to ensure that these creators are known elsewhere in the world. And from that, they can also generate, remuneration. So it's very important that broadcasters understand the importance they play in the creative sector, that it's not just content, but empowering local is very important, because we are, as Madam said, it's a cultural heritage we have, and we want that to be promoted elsewhere in the world. So the motion is welcomed, yes.
Now, when we look at music usage trends, what has NASCAM observed across Namibian radio stations when it comes to supporting local content?
Well, unfortunately, I think it is not very clear in the code of conduct, because content can mean a lot of things in terms of the interpretation which has been outlined there. But I think it is clear in our royalties distribution and the usage data which we collect from the broadcasters, various broadcasters. Number one, the public broadcasters and also commercial broadcasters. I can confidently say we do not have a 50+ threshold of local content on the broadcasters, but it's instead the other way around, meaning 50+1 international content and the rest is local. So yes, it will make an impact, obviously, if we have this motion enacted as a law or somehow. It's because what we are trying to do is you can go to other countries and they have the content, they consume content from their own creators. South Korea have what they call, a style based on South Koreans. Every genre, Nigerians have that, South Africans have that. And it's their identity. And if Namibia cannot, or local broadcasters cannot promote that, then what are we talking about? Our own cultural or creations, that we do not have a culture or heritage of whatever is unique identity of Namibian music.
And Madam Kavikairiua, what regulatory obligations do broadcasters currently have when it comes to broadcasting local content, and how enforceable are those policies in reality? Because it's one thing now to have the policies and it's another thing to comply to those policies.
Yes. So in terms of the broadcasting code, there's a threshold for the provision of local content. So if you look at the radios, it's required 15% of the music that they play should be local content. If you look at television, for commercial, it's 10%, and community, it's 15%. NBC has 30%. So there are various categories for the various types of licenses. And with regards to enforceability, it is enforceable in that if licensees do not adhere to the conditions, so the broadcasting code would be a license condition for them to adhere to. And if they do not adhere to those conditions, then CRAN can issue summons and also issue penalties. So in terms of the Act, there are prescribed penalties that we can issue in that regard as well.
I just want to add something to that, because I think the problem with the code is probably the interpretation exactly what does 15%, 30% means, right? If we look at music, for instance, and you apply the context of this code of conduct, it can mean you are a Namibian presenter speaking on this specific program. That is local content, but it does not digest, or it doesn't break down the actual things that needs to be there. Say, is it music? If it's music, then it must be music, and say it must be clear. Because my understanding from that code of conduct, it just says 15% content, meaning you can have talk shows, locally made, Namibian, that is local content. But where does it specifically talk about music itself? So music is already incorporated into the content of talk shows or sports shows or whatever. So that is actually not enough. So it should have been specific in this way to say, when we talk about 15%, we want specifically to say 15% music, 15% local shows, and A, B,
movies
and C.
and so on.
That's exactly, yes.
Oh, okay.
That's where the interpretation is flawed.
Some members of parliament raised concerns about underdeveloped copyrights as well as weak regulatory structures. Are we where we need to be in terms of legal and institutional framework to support local content creators?
Look, the broadcasting code that I'm referring to was released or published in 2018. So there's definitely room for improvement. And in terms of the Communications Act, you can initiate a rulemaking procedure. So the broadcasting code can be amended, where they can be amended through CRAN's initiative, or somebody else can bring forth a motion to amend the broadcasting code. So yes, perhaps the code could not be as enforceable or as up to date as required, but there is room for improvement and amendment. Enforceability is definitely there because the Communication Act sets out how to enforce it, and because it's a regulation, and if you don't adhere to the regulation, they're not adhering to your license conditions. So the enforceability is there through the penalties and the summons that we would then issue. And if you look at that penalty, the penalty has a maximum penalty of 500,000. But obviously when CRAN implements the penalties, you look at the person who has committed the offense, what was the offense, and you consider also affordability and not just enforce the 500,000 unilaterally across everyone.
Yes, from NASCAM, let's talk about royalty. It was mentioned in Parliament that some artists are getting as little as $2 per radio play, and that's actually divided among the right holders.
Yes.
How do current airplay pattern impact royalty collections?
The question needs to be looked at holistically from the creatives industry. NASCAM is just a player, and we are there to protect, to collect, and to distribute royalties to our members. Now, who are the other players? The other players are broadcasters who are consuming music, and royalties distribution depend on two variables, which is the collection of the actual royalties from the broadcaster and the data, usage data, which form part and parcel of any agreement we have with the broadcasters. So if now we have an agreement and with a broadcaster and they are not complying by providing us with the data or either paying their royalties annually, then we will have a situation where $2 royalties is distributed. Yes, because it's either we didn't get enough data from the commercial broadcasters or other broadcasters, because what we have now currently is a situation where public broadcaster provide the bulk of the usage data, and most of the commercial broadcasters, they either don't or they don't either pay. So we have a situation, even if your music was consumed by or on a commercial broadcaster, meaning that if they have paid us money but they have not provided us data, there's nothing we can do. But we sit with the money, but what do? We need to apply a process, what we call, we apply the usage data from the broadcaster, public broadcaster, to pay the royalties, because eventually it is flawed, because you will then have music that has been consumed in a commercial broadcasters, which is probably a large percentage of our local content, of our local users, creators, and the money that was paid is unfortunately not going to be paid to those creators because we have used a different set of data. You see where the problem is. We want actual data and we don't have it. And that's not a problem of NASCAM. It's a systemic problem of the industry itself. And that is why we have those type of anomalies of $2 royalties being paid. We want the creators to understand we are there to help, but the industry need to come on board and also bring the data as required. from the commercial side.
But is NASCAM in dialogue with the broadcasters or with CRAN now to resolve the issues?
Yes, it's a contractual issue, number one, because if we have a contract with a broadcaster, it means they are in default. So we have had engagements last year, since November last year, with the commercial broadcasters in particular to address the issue of non-compliance, whether it is payment and also providing us with their obligations, which is usage data. We have pointed out to them and say, look, there's no point for us. There's no point you give us royalties, money, and what do we do with it? We pose that same question. How do you expect us to distribute this money without the usage data? So we have brought that to their attention, and the issue now is being addressed through reforming these contracts and making sure that there is compliance. It's a long way to go, but we know we are following the basic foundation of enforcing, commercial contracts between two parties, because at the end of the day, these contracts will stipulate exactly what should we do when they are not in compliance with the agreements we are going to put in place right now.
What is CRAN's role in tracking compliance once content quotas are introduced?
So CRAN has a portal where broadcasters and all licensees have to submit their information. So they need to have a local content policy, and then there's also a local content report that is annually submitted. So once that is submitted, a review has to be done to ensure that all of the requirements have been met, all of the reports have been submitted in addition to the quality of service reports that they also submit. And after that, and if you see any broadcaster or any licensee hasn't submitted any information, what CRAN will do is then contact the broadcaster and just inform them, give them an opportunity to submit. And failure of which, or failure to adhere to the requirements, then summons would be issued, and alongside the summons would be the penalties as well. So we are trying to also just be more intentional with enforcing the broadcasting code, especially with the local content requirements, and holding the broadcasters to code to make sure that they adhere to this, that they submit these reports, and if they do not, that we will then issue the penalties. So that is also an initiative that CRAN has taken on to make sure that we strongly enforce this as well, because we've heard the uproar and we want to do our part to assist and make sure that there is compliance.
Mm-hmm.
Just to add to that, because I have a couple of questions I would have wanted to have. I wish I could be the fly on the wall when CRAN is doing that assessment, because we have a dilemma. They make the assessment annually and say you are complying. Yet, at the other hand, the same broadcasters do not provide us with any usage data at all to indicate exactly whose music they have consumed.
But have you demand for that?
We demand that. But yet, for some reason, they are able to give the same data to CRAN to do the evaluation. That's a problem for us, because we ask the same data and they cannot provide that data to us. So that's why I say it's very interesting. We wanted to be able to do objections annually, but it's logistically a nightmare for us to be able to go through those objections. I think there's a section in the Broadcasters Act that allows objections for annual renewals, which we have considered, but obviously we thought of the logistics about it. But I think it's really necessary for CRAN to ensure, and even to bring our views, even when they do this annual assessment before they renew their license, to say, hold on, you say you have played this type of music. Can we also have a view, just a balanced view? It's within the CRAN's mandate to ask for any information when they do an evaluation. Hold on, can you ask NASCAM, who is the rights holders, who represent rights holders? Can you show us, did you get any usage data from any of these broadcasters? We will be willing to say yes or no, because you depend on that data to do an evaluation. You give them a go-ahead to say, yes, you have complied. Based on which data, which we couldn't get. It's our rights holders' data, and you are withholding that?
So let me just come in.
Yes, please.
Yes. So it's not an annual renewal. The licenses are usually either 5 years or 10 years. So the renewal is not, we don't renew annually. So, and with regards to the data, I think maybe it would be good for NASCAM and CRAN to sit down and see, to do a comparison and see if the data that we are requiring, is it the same data that you're requiring? Perhaps it's not as detailed as you would like, or it is the same data. And then we are able to see if there's a possibility to be able to cross-share that data or to assist one another in ensuring compliance. I think it's probably a conversation that can be had to just try and figure it out.
That's exactly why I asked earlier whether there was any dialogue between broadcasters and CRAN to improve the whole situation. Now, how can NASCAM and CRAN play a role in helping build support system?
So what CRAN can do, because also CRAN is limited within its mandate, and we can only do what our mandate or what we are enabled in terms of the Communications Act. So what we can do in terms of the broadcasting code, there is requirements as to the kind of content that can be broadcasted. So what the assistance can be is to ensure that that content that is being broadcasted or that is being created meets the requirements of the broadcasting code. For example, you cannot broadcast explicit content that will incite violence, hate speech, that kind of content. So the assistance that CRAN could offer would just be to ensure that the content is within the parameters. That way it can be broadcasted, because if the content does not comply with the parameters, it can also not be broadcasted. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where CRAN would be able to offer assistance. Mm-hmm.
From NASCAM's point of view, I think we have had concerns from broadcasters on the quality of the rights holders' works. You know, they have complained about, the reason why we don't play that much of local is because of quality. And my question was, tell us the standards. What are the standards of quality? Mm-hmm. You cannot sit out there and you push a narrative to say Namibian music doesn't have quality. You must set this. Who must set the standard? You know, how can you be the judge and also be the one making the complaint? So make sure it's true, the industry needs a certain set of standards to be able to say, okay, this music is of this type of standard. But if we leave this up to the broadcasters, they're going to use that and continue to say, we have a reason why we are not playing local, you know. But nonetheless, we want to ensure through Parliament, through other mechanisms, through other institutions like the National Arts Council, that our creators are capacitated. Number one, the playing field is not fair, yes, because creators like from our country, they don't have quality studios where they can produce this. They don't have training. They don't have the skills, the knowledge of the industry, how to benefit and to commercialize or to monetize their works on the equal basis like other creators. And our focus is really to make sure that whatever is due to the creators in terms of government support, it must come through capacity building and education and awareness. Look at, for instance, Mega. I don't know if you know Mega, the creator of Pekevene song. You know, he's one of a good example to use to say he was uneducated. He didn't even know that he needed to come to register his works with NASCAM. He created a song which is internationally recognized, you know, and he got nothing for it because simply he forgot to register with NASCAM. If you go on his YouTube channel for that specific song, Pekevene, it has plus minus 1.6 million. But the person who put this content on his channel has over 10 million. If you were to commercialize that, he will have earned the money. You know, so education is very important. Our legislators need to understand, to be able to capacitate our creators, we need to put a lot of funding. It's just like education for going to learn to write and do all kinds of things. And that's what our creators need as well.
You gave us an example of Mega, you know, how important training it is. Maybe can you just tell us also, how does NASCAM support emerging artists, you know, especially those in rural areas, in understanding their rights and registering their work?
Our mandate is really to help to protect creators. The moment they have registered their works, then we are there to protect and help distribute and collect the royalties. The mandate of giving training is within the ambit of the National Arts Council. They have that mandate to educate, to help the creators understand the industry, and also from the perspective of intellectual property and copyright. BIPA is the right institution to help creators understand their rights in terms of copyright. Yes, we are busy engaging BIPA and so that we can help for educate our members about intellectual property. But the mandate really is with BIPA, but we are willing to support any training that can be done and extended to the creators. Yes, there is a gap currently, institutional gaps, and they are not assisting as much as we wanted them to assist the creators. It's a bureaucratic challenge already just for NASCAM itself to get to tap funding, to help to get funding from the National Arts Council to be able to assist the creators in understanding their intellectual property or their copyright. It's a nightmare. What about individual themselves, a person in the rural areas? How can he or she reach out to National Arts Council to say, I want some training, some sort of training about the industry? You know, that is very difficult. So we are trying to stand in that gap and say, assist NASCAM financially to get to be able to train our own members on a regular basis about copyright, how to register their works, and how to make sure that they monetize their rights as well.
There is a local content development fund that was proposed in the motion. How visible is this idea in Namibia's current context?
I believe that it should be feasible. I think it will assist the content creators in order to create content. Perhaps then when you speak about the broadcasters that are complaining about, like Mr. Nicanor said, complaining about the quality of the content that is being created, perhaps this fund could also assist in ensuring that maybe you set standards that the content needs to meet. You assist them in creating quality standards that can be elevated. And they would also then encourage the broadcasters to want to sort of broadcast the content and all of that. So I think it's a very good idea.
And in all this, where does it leave the audience? What role now audience have to play in this transformation?
Well, Namibia doesn't even have audience analytics, you know, because we will have wanted broadcasters, maybe CRAN can do that and say one of their requirements is to have audience analytics to be able to tell, for viewers to tell what they want, you know, what do they want to listen and all that. It's very important so that when broadcasters makes these applications on an annual basis, they bring also audience analytics and show, oh yeah, we have been able to cater this type of demographics and these are genres or whatever. It will help also, you know, for us as audience, as creators of music to be able to understand what do the audiences really want.
And I think also just generally, it would be good if the public can also just support local content. I think it's important because the local content creators and the broadcasters can broadcast it, but if no one is watching it or uptaking it, then that also is a problem. So I think as a nation, we need to push the initiative and want to support local content and do as much as we can to make it succeed as well.